What is up, y'all? I am back. It's just me today. I'm ready. I got my Bible with me. I got the New King James Version. But today's topic is atheism is foolish, and Paul confirms that God exists. And a lot of you might be like, well, Paul is just a man. How would that confirm God exists? Because Paul is a very, 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 very important figure historically and still in today in the modern world. Why? Because even skeptical and atheist scholars confirm Paul's existence. So if we confirm Paul's existence, then we confirm that these are Paul's letters. Now, not all skeptics and atheist scholars confirm all 13 of his books, but they do confirm 7 of them, which that's all I need is 7 of them. 13 puts the nail in the coffin. But if you want to limit me and say I can only use 7, fine. I'll only use 7 that the scholars who are skeptics and atheists agree to. I only need 7. That's all I need. So today's topic is atheism is foolish. It is. It's foolish, and Paul confirms that God exists. Untrustworthy now. Yes, atheism is untrustworthy. And it's untrustworthy because atheism is a roller coaster. I've seen it. Atheism is a roller coaster for you guys. The reason is because one day you can be happy. One day you can say facts are facts. And then the next day you'll dip down and you'll say, no, facts are no longer truth if it goes against your thought process, your worldview. This is why it's untrustworthy, because there's no foundation. Atheism is built on glass foundation, which is why it always cracks. It always breaks, because one day your worldview would say, yes, I agree with this. And then the next day your worldview would say, no, I don't agree with this. So this no longer is sufficient. So I take this away. But you just confirm this. So you're flip-flopping back and forth. You flip-flop back and forth, flip-flop back and forth. So yes, atheism is in fact untrustworthy. It's very untrustworthy because of the simple fact you have no foundation. Everything for you is subjective. And if it's subjective, that means it's all based off of opinion and how you feel. How can I trust anything in life? Even if I take out my biased opinion about Christianity, right? Even if I take that out for a second, how could you, as a person, a thinking human being, trust anything that's based off of feelings and subjectivity? Logically, how would you be able to trust atheism when it's built on subjective matters? That means it's only based off of how you feel. If you feel like this is wrong, but then the next atheist feels like this is right, you're just flip-flopping back and forth. Even atheists don't agree with each other about their own ideology, about their own worldview. So how would you be able to trust that, yes, atheism is foolish because it's untrustworthy? 100%. That's simple. Yeah, I think that what you're saying, you're just literally confirming exactly what I'm saying. Atheism is foolish because you are literally going based off of how you feel. Literally, even your comments right here, Chuck, is based off of how you feel. You're just spitting out stuff out of your mouth because you are offended by the fact that I'm calling atheism untrustworthy, instead of giving me the facts and the objective facts, the objective stance on why atheism has a foundation. You're only telling me how you feel. I can give you objective fact of why Christianity is true. You can't give me objective fact on why atheism is true. This is why it's false. It's false, it's foolish, and it's untrustworthy. No, it can't be. Everything that I just said about atheism can't be applied to Christianity. You know why? Because we have a moral lawgiver. This is why atheism fails. Because if everything is subjective to Chuck, then everything subjective to Chuck can change based off of the next person. Even if you were to have a child, your child can have a subjective view to you, Chuck. And if they have a subjective view to you, it's just going to flip flop and flip flop and flip flop. That's not a foundation. That's not sustainable. All that does is create chaos. Versus Christianity, it's not flip flop. It's not flip flop. We have a moral lawgiver. And because we have a moral lawgiver, if someone steps outside of that moral objective law, then we know that they're wrong because our moral lawgiver already told us this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, this is right. It's not based off of how I feel about it. This is the issue, is atheism wants to live in a world based off of, if I feel like this today and feel like this tomorrow, I should be allowed to do that. That's not how the real world works. If you feel like you want to run a red light and you do it and you get pulled over, you can't get mad at the cop for pulling you over because you broke the law. So the cop is going to pull you over just because, Chuck, you feel like, oh, I feel like breaking the law. I feel like going past the stoplight without stopping, and they pull you over. You can't say, well, I feel like I should be able to go past this light without stopping. No, you can't do that. You have to abide by the law. It's the same thing with the moral law. This is why you guys can't be consistent. Even atheists can't be consistent in their worldview, because if you are truly consistent in your worldview, everything in your life will be subjective. Everything. But yet you follow laws, you follow rules. You know why? Because rules matter. You just don't like the rules that God put in place because you want to break them. So you reject God because you don't like the laws he's giving you because you think it's too hard. See, that's how I know you're not even paying attention, Joe. I didn't say you run a red light because you feel like it. I said if you felt like it and you decided to run the red light because that's how you felt that day and you got pulled over, I'm giving you a hypothetical. I didn't say this is what you do. I gave you a hypothetical and said if you decided to run a red light because you felt like it and a cop pulled you over because of it, you can't look at that cop and say, well, I felt like it. He's going to say, well, I felt like giving you a ticket. Here you go. This is the issue with subjective atheism. You have to have an objective lawgiver. This is the problem. And when you don't have an objective lawgiver, it's all based off of what you decide that day. And whether you want to actually admit it or not, this is the truth. It said, random guy. He says, I'm not really religious. I don't believe in gods or stuff like that because of what? Dominational being is not scientifically possible. What do you mean? How is a multi-dimensional being not possible? So Christianity is not based off of I don't know if you're talking about the other religions, but Christianity is not based off of multiple gods. It's one God that created everything. He just exists as three persons. I'm gonna leave it at that, because if you can't even fathom if there's one God, I'm not even gonna go into how God can exist as three persons. We gotta start with, why don't you believe in a God first? That's where we gotta start. And just because it's not scientifically possible to you doesn't mean it's not possible. Because if there is a creator who created this universe, he doesn't abide by the laws of humanity. That's what you're missing. If there's a creator who is God, that means he created science, which that means he's allowed to be outside of it. Do you understand? And if he's allowed to be outside of science, this is why it's possible for him to do the things even outside of science. So this is the issue that scientists have. Scientists still can't answer how did Jesus resurrect, and they can't disprove his resurrection. And they can't figure out how did the whole universe get here. I'm waiting for I want someone to come up so we can have a discussion. I don't like talking to the comments all day because the comments can just go back and forth, but if you want to actually have a conversation, just click the link at the top that I pinned to the top so we can have a discussion. If you disagree that atheism is foolish and Paul confirms that God exists, that's the whole point of this, to actually have a conversation, not just to tell you how I feel or you tell me how you feel. Let's actually have a discussion. So if you have an opinion or you have an objective thought, then go ahead and click the link so we can have a discussion. Yeah, Chuck, I think you just like to argue. I've come to that conclusion, Chuck. You just like to argue. You just like to sit behind the computer and comment and say because what you're saying doesn't even make sense half the time. Yeah, atheism does have a lot to do about morality, but I'm not here to go into morality. I'm here to go into God existing. That's what we're here to do. I don't care to talk about morality first, because if you can't even fathom that there's a creator who gave you morality, why am I going to morality in the first place? We're here to talk about God's existence first. You have to let that check in first. It's like talking about morality and going to all these things that atheism tries to push onto you guys is like reading a book and trying to go to the end of the chapters first instead of reading the first chapter. And you think you know about the whole book because you read the last chapter. This is what you're doing. You're like, you're going to skip the creator who gave you the morality and try to go to the end of the chapter and say, oh yeah, I'm on chapter 37. Now I know about the whole book. No, that's not how this works. You have to first start at chapter 1. And chapter 1 is the creator. We have to figure out, does God exist? That's what you have to figure out first, Jay. You have to figure out, does God exist? Before you jump into morality, all of these different topics, because what atheism tries to teach you guys is it tries to teach you how to give intellectual arguments to make it sound so smart that you forget about the simple and the basics. You are overlooking the basics and going all the way over here and confusing yourself. This is what you're doing. This is what atheism teaches. And you want to know how I know? I'm going to tell you exactly how I know, because I have quotes. I have quotes from one of the most notorious, one of the most well-known atheists, and he's confused. I'm going to show you. All of you who are atheists know exactly who Richard Dawkins is, right? Yes, I think all of you do. And if you don't, Richard Dawkins is one of the most well-known atheists that exist. And I'm going to give you some quotes from Richard Dawkins and tell you why atheism is untrustworthy, because even your leader of atheism is untrustworthy because he's confused, right? First, let's say this. Let me show you this quote right here. Richard Dawkins says, I don't know if Jesus actually existed, but I guarantee you he did not rise from the dead. Okay, so he's making a claim here. He's saying, I don't really know if Jesus existed, but I know he didn't rise from the dead. That's a contradicting quote right there. Why? Because you're saying, I don't know if he existed, but I do know he didn't rise from the dead. So he would have to be alive first for him to die and rise or not rise from the dead. So you're confused right there. You're saying, I don't know, but I know he didn't do this. First, figure out, is he a real person or was he not? Before you try to jump to see if he was dead or alive. That's the first issue. So Richard Dawkins is confused there. Then he says, Richard Dawkins again quotes this, and you can go search it for yourself if you want. It's on the Christian Post. Richard Dawkins says, Jesus was a great moral teacher. Somebody as intelligent as Jesus would have been a good atheist if he had known what we know today. You see the contradiction of Richard Dawkins right here. The first quote I just gave you, Richard Dawkins says, I don't know if Jesus was alive, but I do know that if he didn't rise from the dead. Then the next quote says, Jesus was a great moral teacher. So is Jesus alive or is he not? Your own leader of atheism doesn't even know what he's talking about because he's trying to be so intellectual that he's forgetting about the basics. Is Jesus a real person or not, Richard Dawkins? You're saying he's a great moral teacher, which means you're confirming he's a real person. How can you confirm Jesus is a great moral teacher? He said was a great moral teacher, not possibly could have been a great moral teacher if he existed. He said Jesus was a great moral teacher, meaning he's confirming Jesus is a real person. But in the other quote, he's stating, I don't know if he was, but I do know he didn't rise from the dead. Richard Dawkins is confused himself. That's the problem. All righty. I'm gonna bring up I'll bring up Jason first because Jason joined in first.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, boss?
I keep forgetting your name. What's your name?
Carson.
Oh, that's just okay. All right. Well, nice to be talking to you again.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. Went to church this morning, so feeling good.
All right. Well, what's up? What's the best evidence you got?
Well, so the topic is atheism is foolish, and Paul confirms that God exists.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I'm saying Paul confirms God exists is because let's start with the top line. All right, the top line is the most well-known skeptical scholar, which is Bart Ehrman. He confirms Paul's existence, and he also confirms Paul's 7 authentic letters of Paul. Right,
Mm-hmm.
and within these 7 authentic letters of Paul is giving us a lot of details that are showing us that Jesus was in fact a real person. Peter, who was a disciple of Jesus, was a real person because he states in Galatians that he met Peter and he met Jesus' half-brother, James. So we have a lot of information that even the skeptical scholars say these are authentic to Paul. And I'm wondering because even your skeptical scholars, they quote Paul as a first-class philosophical mind, meaning they believe Paul was a scholar. So we have a scholar. This is why they accept his writings, because they consider him a first-class philosophical mind. So we have someone who's not crazy. We have someone who's intellectual, someone who knows multiple languages, that is confirming something that is very, very intriguing for someone of his intellect level. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think when scholars refer to the books you're saying that they're authentic writings of Paul, that doesn't mean that what Paul is saying is necessarily true. Like I can find you an authentic Harry Potter book, but that doesn't mean the words on the page were that actually happened.
Well, that's a facetious comparison, and the reason I say that is because we know Harry Potter land doesn't exist, but we know Jerusalem exists today. We know that the land of Galatia was a real place. We know that Romans is a real place. So to try to compare it to Harry Potter is a facetious comparison, a facetious argument, because we know that Harry Potter didn't exist even in real life.
Well, I can pick another book. I could pick Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer. Abraham Lincoln was a real person. It takes place in the historical setting in which all that was happening. It just, I mean, I'm just saying that even if it's an authentic writing, it's not that it's necessarily what it says in the writings are true. It's not inherent.
Yeah, I'm not going to be biased. I'm going to stay consistent. I agree that doesn't make it true. What I'm pointing out is we have someone that the scholars deem as a first-class philosophical mind, meaning he's not crazy, he's a scholar. And we have this scholar convinced that he saw Jesus with his own eyes. We have this scholar stating that this man Jesus died for our sins and he is God. This is very profound and very intriguing, at least to look into the data of why would someone of his intellect level would be convinced of this. That's what I'm pointing to. I agree with you. It doesn't necessarily make it true, but it does make it intriguing to look into it and say, why would someone of his intelligence, of his status, also being a Pharisee, why would he give that up and go over here and go on the run and be imprisoned? He had to be convinced of something.
Yeah, I would say it was just the road to Damascus experience that did that mostly.
And do you believe that that experience was a hallucination? What do you think that was?
I don't know what it was.
So then you can't rule out that he actually could have saw what he saw if you don't even know what it was. You see what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
I can't disprove what he said, but I with that experience, but I need someone to positively affirm that it what happened, that what his experience was actually did happen to him.
Well, we do. So we have his soldiers that were there that heard Jesus' voice audibly. They didn't see him physically like Paul did, but they heard his voice audibly. And then we also have another man who had a dream that this was going to happen to Paul. And when he met up with Paul, he told Paul, "Hey, Paul, I had a dream that you were going to meet Jesus." And Paul said, "Oh, I actually did have this happen to me on my road to Damascus." So we have a few witnesses that all attest to agreeing that what happened to Paul was in fact real. And if you, I don't know if you've heard of Paul Meyer, but Paul Meyer is a scholar. He worked at Western Michigan University as a historian, and he states, not just a historian, as a antiquity historian. So he studies ancient history, and he
Hmm.
quotes that for any historian that does ancient history, two witnesses to something is enough evidence for them to deem it as highly probable. And so not only do we have two witnesses of Paul, we have up to five. So, and that's just Paul. And we won't even get into Jesus himself. Jesus had over 30 witnesses that are just writing about him. So this is why it's profound, because even the historians state that just two agreeing to something that happened in the ancient world is a significant amount of evidence for them. And like I said, this historian's name is Paul Meyer.
Yeah. I understand where that comes from. Mainly the thought that the likelihood of two people hallucinating the exact same thing is highly unlikely, but it seems to happen all the time. If you look at like the miracle of Fatima, I can't remember the exact count of people who were looking up and saw the sun dancing as like the Mother of Mary. I can't remember what country was that either. We just looked it up, we could find it. But group hallucinations are very common, and they're not something to be ruled out. That is, even if the claims that are written down are true still.
Well, that's why I asked, do you think it was a hallucination? And I even wrote it down myself because I knew that this was possibly going to be an argument.
Mhm.
And I call it the hallucination problem. The problem with the hallucination thing is hallucinations are usually individual. You can even look this up. Hallucinations are never groups. So you're telling me that a group of people all had the same hallucination experience. Hallucination is usually an individual who experienced something and then they go tell someone, or they say, "Hey, I had this experience." It is literally less than a 5% chance that this group had the same hallucination experience. That's the first issue. The second issue is they do not occur identically, meaning they all say that they saw Jesus, but the way that they say they saw Jesus is it differs. So this means also that their hallucinations are different. So they all experience seeing Jesus. So they all agree to this part, but how they say that they saw Jesus, all of the experiences are different. So this gives us a good probability that this cannot be a hallucination, because we have the same groups of people agreeing to something while also saying that they had different experiences of it. So hallucination of the same group is highly unlikely.
Well, I mean, I would just defer to if your proof that this is all real and Paul actually saw it is in the hallucination, then that's a lot of work. Like you have to prove ahead of you, like. I'm trying to think how to phrase it correctly, but if like any naturalistic explanation is more likely, no matter how low the odds are, than a supernatural explanation. And I feel like what you're saying with the hallucinations were seemingly all of God or Jesus, yet they differed only is more confirmation that it was likely to happen. The fact that they had a group hallucination, but they weren't all identical. They all kind of had their own version of it. Would seem to be more favorable to what I'm saying. I think. What do you think?
So okay, let's say this, which I don't agree, but let's say this, just hear me out for a second. Even if I gave you they hallucinated, even if I gave you that, right? It still doesn't explain something that's not a hallucination, which is why is Jesus's tomb empty? This is not a hallucination. This is something that they physically saw. So even if I gave you the fact that maybe it's possible that they hallucinated and said that they saw Jesus and had a supernatural experience, it still doesn't negate the fact that we do know Jesus was a real person, and they did say he did die on that cross at the crucifixion. So why is his tomb empty? So this throws out hallucination. It throws it out because of the simple fact his tomb is empty. You still there?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, okay, sorry about that. Can you repeat like probably just the last sentence? I only cut out right at the end.
So I said this rules out Jesus's tomb being empty, completely rules out the hallucination statement, because they're all stating that they saw Jesus risen from the dead. And then, like I said, if I even gave you it's a possibility that they were hallucinating, it still does not negate the fact that Jesus' tomb was empty. And because his tomb was empty and they're confirming that they saw him alive, we have to throw out the fact that they were hallucinating, because it still does not explain why his tomb is empty. Because like I said, even these skeptical scholars agree Jesus was alive, he was a real person, and they confirmed that he was crucified. So why is his tomb empty if they were hallucinating?
Well, what's the confirmation that the Jesus's tomb was empty?
What's the confirmation?
Yeah.
They couldn't find it. He wasn't just killed by his own people. It wasn't the Jews who killed him. He was executed by the Romans, which is a hostile group to the Jews. They ruled over the Jews. So they crucified him. So they're looking for his body, and the Jews are looking for his body. And none of them have been able to produce his body. Even if we say, well, the Jews may have grabbed his body and hid it, because they were overruled by Rome, which they didn't believe in Judaism, they didn't believe in Christianity, they didn't care anything about a Messiah or anything like that, because they didn't believe in it. They would be searching for his body, and they would tell the Jews, produce the body now or else. And the Jews are like, we don't even have it. I don't know. Because the Romans are a key factor into this, because they are a hostile group to the Jews, because they rule over them. Even they couldn't produce his body.
Yeah, but I mean, my main issue with this is that everything was oral history until the books start being written down 50, 60 years later.
That's not true.
So that's not true?
No.
How's that not true?
I'll show you. So you'll get that information from the skeptical scholars, and the reason you're going to get that information, it all starts because of Jesus's prediction. He told everyone that the temple was going to be destroyed 40 years before it actually happened. And it happened in 70 AD that the temple was destroyed. Mm-hmm. And if you look at every single thing that the scholars they date it after that 70 AD, because you know why? Because they're skeptics just like you. They say, well, we can't say it happened before 70 AD, because if we do, then we're confirming that Jesus knew the future. And if we're confirming Jesus knew the future, then we're confirming that it's a possibility he is God. Because how would he know the future? That's my first point. So they rule out the possibility of a miracle. So they, if you look at it, they date everything after 70 AD. They do everything. But let me show you something that's actually very interesting, which even skeptic scholars confirm the dates on these things. Let me show you something.
Can I respond to the first point really quick though?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I can almost guarantee you that the reason they date the earliest text past 70 AD is not because they don't want Jesus to have a miracle.
No, it's because they don't believe in miracles. So they're not.
I mean, I need you to go. You'd have to show me, or not that you'd have to show me, but if we went through case by case, they're not saying, in their archaeological findings and their literary criticism of the text that, oh well, it would be 40 AD, but Jesus can't perform miracles. I'm an atheist, therefore it was written in 75 AD instead. I mean, that's just subjectively not what they're doing.
But they wouldn't do that because that would make them look stupid because they're supposed to be scholars. But I'm going to show you why.
You could make them look stupid if you went into the literary analysis and were able to prove that it was dated before 70 AD. You could have you could be one of the most famous biblical scholars.
That's what I'm about to do.
Okay, perfect.
I'm about to show you the dates that they confirm on certain things and why the dates that they give of the Gospels don't add up. I'm about to give it to you. Let me show you.
Is this all your or is this like some website that I can also go? You can read
I'm gonna use literally the scriptures. I'm gonna show you the scriptures, and then I'm gonna show you the dates that they confirm. Because, like I said, Bart Ehrman confirms that Galatians is an authentic book of Paul. That's where they messed up. They messed up by confirming that these are authentic to Paul, and Paul gives us a timeline within Galatians, and then they give us, the skeptic scholars gives us a timeline, and I'm going to show you why what they're saying doesn't actually make sense. Let me show you. So let's just Google real quick. For example, when did Bart Ehrman say Galatians?
I mean, I don't necessarily care exactly what Bart Ehrman said. It's
well,
I care about what
he's the number one. He's the number one.
Yeah, I know. I would just prefer the actual scholarly consensus. We don't need to appeal to just the one guy.
There's no one really, what I'm saying. Like I said, there's no one really above him. So
I know, but I don't. He's not like a prophet to me. I'd rather what all the scholars say. The independent corroborations is what
give me a scholar that you would like to use then.
Well, no, I don't care about one specific scholar. I'm saying it might not even be in there for you to just look up.
I'll do this. I'll just say, when was Galatians written?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Galatians, overview. Galatians was written by the Apostle Paul around 48 to 49 AD. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let's go to Galatians. I'm going to show you something very interesting. So keep in mind, Galatians 48 to 49 AD. Paul gives us a timeline here. In Galatians, this is the book of Galatians. He wrote this in 49 AD. Let's just use 48 to, so we don't have to keep saying 48 to 49. So he wrote Galatians in 48 AD. He tells us, then 3 years later, I went up to Jerusalem to become acquainted with Cephas, which Cephas is Peter. This is Peter, the Apostle Peter, right? So he's writing this in the book. He's writing this in Galatians. He's giving us a timeline. So if he wrote Galatians in 48, and he's telling us a 3-year period of time that happened before 48 AD, this means we have to at least subtract 3 from 48. So we have 45 AD. Possibly he met Peter in 45 AD. Yes?
I mean, what I would say it's more about the passage that comes before it. What is he talking about in this chapter? Because I'd say whatever he's talking about before, then 3 years later he goes to Jerusalem. That's what we would date it off of, right? not when we can attest the
Well,
earliest manuscript of
I'm saying,
Galatians.
well, the reason I'm saying subtract it is because Paul is he can't see the future. So if he wrote Galatians in 48, he's not saying in the next 3 years I'm going to go meet Peter. He's saying this
Yeah,
already.
I understand that. Okay, I mean, I know what you were saying before. I mean, I think
You get what I'm saying? Because Paul can't see in the future. So he's not saying in the next 3 years I'm going
yeah.
to go see.
You're just saying it's at least he's talking 3 years farther back.
Exactly. At least.
That's okay. Yeah.
At least 3 years further back. But then something else is very interesting. That's one period of time. Then in Galatians chapter 2, Peter says, Paul says, then after 14 years, I went up to Jerusalem again. So now we have a very interesting timeline. We have a 3-year period that happened before Galatians, and we have a 14-year period that happened before Galatians. Because, like I said, they confirmed that 48 AD Galatians was written. And Paul is not stating, hey, in 14 years, I'm gonna go up to Jerusalem. No, he said,
he's writing this after the fact. Yeah,
exactly. So we have to subtract 14 from 48. Let's do it very briefly, just so people know I'm not lying. We're gonna subtract 48 from 14. We have 34 AD, which puts us only 1 year after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Only 1 year. So them stating that all this stuff was written prior, decades and time after the fact, this is not true because Paul gave us the timeline. They messed up by giving us dates for Galatians, and Paul gives us dates before Galatians.
Yeah, I mean, all of the Gospels and everything are telling stories of before we can confirm their oldest copies. And I mean that's they're not saying that.
But you just made a claim that it happened way after the fact, and I'm showing you that this tradition started a year after Jesus' crucifixion.
No, I understand that. No, I'm saying that the books aren't written until 50, just because in that book that he writes in 50, that 14 years ago I did this and 3 years ago I did this. That doesn't mean that the book still wasn't written down and first compiled 20 to 30 years after the fact. That's all I was saying. I'm not saying he can't talk about things he did in the past. I'm just saying we don't know what was added or subtracted within the time period where it was just oral history for all the first the first church, the first early church.
Okay, I'll give you some more because that was just the start. Paul is just the start. So now let's go into the Gospels really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right?
Yep.
Do you know which one they say came first?
Chronologically or the oldest stated?
Chronologically, like which one came before all of the other Gospels?
I know the last was John, was it not? I can't remember the first.
Yeah, it was John. John was last. First they say is Mark. They say Mark is first, then Matthew, then Luke, then John.
Yeah.
But Luke gives us a significant piece of evidence where the timelines they give us for these dates are actually wrong, and I'll tell you why. So in the book of Acts, let's look this up really quick. They state Acts. You look at this. Look how big of a range they give us. They give us 60.
They don't just make up a range. There's a mathematical formula for variance that you come up with that.
You know what's funny? This is actually a more modern take. This is actually newer information because scholars, right, smarter than me, actually have confirmed that what the skeptical scholars were giving as dates were in fact wrong. So they updated it. It used to be Acts was written between 80 and 85 AD. They changed it because the scholars start pointing out that this is actually false because of something significant in the book of Acts, which is in the book of Acts. Luke is the writer of the book of Acts, which is actually the sequel. So Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke first, and then he wrote Acts. But in Acts, there's two things that Luke records that is very, very important, which he records the death of the first Christian martyr, which is Stephen, and he records the death of James, not the brother of Jesus, but the brother of the Apostle John. He records these two deaths, but the skeptical scholars state that James, the brother of Jesus, John, Apostle John, and Peter and Paul died before Acts. And Luke was actually his teacher was Paul. So the problem that we have here is Acts does not record the death of Peter, which we know is the foundation of the church. He is the leader of all the 12 disciples when Jesus ascends back to heaven. And Peter not being recorded in Acts is your first problem, because he was the foundation once Jesus left. And then Luke not recording the death of Paul is also a problem, because this is his teacher. So why would Luke not record Peter and not record Paul when they're stating Peter died in 64 AD and Paul died in 66 AD, and he wrote the book of Acts in 80 to 85 AD. So almost 20 years later, you're telling me he would not have known that these two people died? He would have recorded it. And how do we know this? Because he recorded the other two people who were following Jesus' deaths. So this says that he had to have written this before they actually died.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's the actual proof that Luke is the author of Luke and Acts.
They confirm.
Firstly, what is the confirmation of that?
Here's the scholars.
I know, like what's the actual data that says Luke wrote
because of the narration. The narration. So the scholars confirm this, for one. If you don't have to believe me. Go look at the skeptical scholars. Don't take my word for it. The skeptical scholars and the Christian scholars confirm that this was Luke. And the reason that they know it was Luke is because Luke is giving a narration, because I just told you that Luke was actually he was under Paul. Paul was his teacher, right? And he's actually giving us the walkthrough of how he ended up meeting Paul. Before Paul became Paul, he was Saul, and he's giving us a story from the beginning when Paul was Saul, Stephen dying as the first Christian martyr, all the way to the end of Acts. The end of Acts shows you Paul getting imprisoned. So, and he was following, they were together. So the reason we know this is because they were together. Luke is giving us a narration outside of Paul of the walk of all the main leaders. Like Peter, he walked with Peter eventually, and he walked with Paul the whole time. And he's giving us that narration from the beginning to the end. So this is how they know that it was Luke, because who Luke was and who he followed and how the narration of the book of Acts went.
I mean, I just don't think that evidence follows necessarily. I mean, because the Gospel of Luke follows the story of Luke, that doesn't mean it was written by Luke. It's not inherent.
Okay, so let me show you.
I mean, I could be completely wrong about this, but from my understanding, we didn't actually have 100% confirmed writers of any of the Gospels.
Of any of the Gospels?
Yeah.
Who said that?
No, that was my understanding. I said I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong.
Yeah, that's like I said, that used to be true back in the day, but as time progresses, and even because we have so many scholars that are butting heads nowadays, more and more information is coming out. Whereas they're actually, in Gary Habermas, he's a Christian scholar. He even said,
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's older. He even said when he first started, there wasn't very many of him. He said there was actually more skeptical scholars when he started versus there is now. He said it's such a competitive thing now that the Christian scholars are trying to show why the skeptical scholars are wrong, and the skeptical scholars are trying to show why the Christian scholars are wrong. Versus back then, it would be like 2 versus 5. Now it's 5 versus 5. So we have so much more information coming out on the Christianity side that now the skeptical scholars have to kind of concede to some things because they're proving some things to be right. Not saying they're agreeing with necessarily everything, but there's some nuances that they have to come down and say, okay, now we both agree on this. But it's never going to be as far as the divinity of Christ or anything like that. But it's more on along the lines of who was this, who was that, who wrote this, who wrote that. Okay, so we have a few people. Okay, so let me pull up his name so you can see it really quick. So this guy here.
Let me get a pencil and a pen, so I want to write some of this down.
Yeah, this is Irenaeus.
Yeah, Irenaeus. Yep.
Yep, he was one of the earliest bishops. He was a part of the first foundations of the church that has now formed to what it is now. But he confirms, he's actually an eyewitness, right? He's an eyewitness because he confirms that Luke was the companion of Paul, right? Which is recorded throughout all the Gospels, actually. So Luke is actually younger. Like when you see like Matthew and then John is older. John and Matthew are older than Luke and Mark. Luke and Mark were actually younger at the time when Jesus was walking the earth. So they were they were young. So like they were under these disciples. But he confirms the confirmation that Luke was actually a companion of Paul's who learned under Paul. So if you want to look into him, you can actually find the information on how we got to the conclusion of Luke being a companion of Paul and following Paul directly, which leads us to how we know Luke wrote Acts and wrote the Gospel of Luke. This is his name. So you can, like I said, you don't have to take my word for it. Go research this guy and look into how he confirms, and then how the
Irenaeus will confirm that Luke was a companion of Paul, or that the writings of Luke are penned by Luke.
That he was a companion of Paul.
Oh, I mean, I believe that.
Yeah, and then if you look at the narration of how the book of Acts was written, it would only be able to be written by someone who knew Paul, like literally. Because the way he wrote it, he wrote it as if he knew this person, not as if it was passed down.
I know, but I can write a book as if I knew someone I didn't.
No, you can only write, like, for example, I'm not old enough, but I'm just gonna give you a compare. Are you old enough to have been a part of 9/11?
Me, no.
Okay, so like for example, me and you're on the same boat because I'm not old enough to actually be a part of 9/11 either. So me and you, if we wrote a book about 9/11 just because we did our research, did our due diligence, it would come out pretty nice, but it wouldn't be the same type of narration of someone who was in New York and experienced 9/11, and they were old enough to comprehend everything that happened when 9/11 took down. So me and you would write completely different than the narration of someone who actually participated, who actually was there when 9/11 occurred. There's writers, there's scholars, and there's people who are smarter than me. It's, that there's different out. They even have things now where if you write a certain way, they can even see that your signature doesn't match this person's signature. And so that they have a way to show you that the narration was written by either third hand or second hand or fourth hand narration versus a first hand or second 100%, hand.
Yeah.
So that's how they came to the conclusion that this is most likely Luke because of the narration, because this can only be narrated by someone who was there, not the narration of someone who's researching it like me and you would do if we were writing about 9/11 versus someone who was there.
Yeah, I mean, with the 9/11 thing, you would only be able to tell if somebody who was there and witnessed it could tell you
Yeah,
that you were not right. So that's
exactly.
the first
Or,
thing,
or
and then
or experienced it.
yeah, exactly. But the second thing, when you're talking about, they're able to tell when other scribes come in and add their own parts to. I mean, that happened to Josephus. They can tell that it's not the same vocabulary of Josephus in some parts of antiquities than in others. But if the primary author was the same, but it wasn't Luke, all of that would still match up. You could still date it to one author, but it might not necessarily be Luke. But I can agree that the I mean, I don't even know if I can, that the preponderance of evidence is that Luke wrote it. I mean, other than if it's just that the story follows the story of Luke, therefore we have high understanding that it is Luke that wrote it. I mean, I just don't know if I can agree to that specifically, but I kind of want to see where we go after this. I might just concede this, and so we can keep talking.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, my point is that Luke confirms that there's only two deaths recorded that are important in the book of
Mhm.
Acts. And if we don't, we know he was a companion of Paul. So if Paul died before the book of Acts was written, why wouldn't the writer, I won't say Luke, but why wouldn't the writer not record Paul's death in there, but record the other person? If they are, in the book of Acts, Paul is in there. Paul is in there. He's mentioned even
Yeah.
before he became Paul. So if he died before this book of Acts was completed, why wouldn't they have mentioned it?
I can't remember where did Paul die?
Paul died, I believe.
I thought it
Uh,
was way off in Rome. Like,
yeah, it was. He died in 66 A.D. Uh,
mhm.
in uh in uh
I might
Rome.
just Google it real. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, and
he
in
died.
Rome. Okay.
He did die in Rome. Yeah, he died in Rome. But that's what I'm saying. So even if that's the case, because I know where you're going, you're saying, well, he was,
Yeah.
a little far away, so they wouldn't have known.
Mhm.
But the dates of the two are significant. This is why I said time. Even the timeline was so significant that the writer of Acts would have known, because they say Paul died in 66 AD, and the book of Acts was written around 80 to 85 AD. So we have almost a 20-year period between the two. He would have known. Do you see how big of a range that is?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
Paul died in 66 and they say it was written in 80 to 85. We have almost a 15 to 20-year span. They would have known.
I'm writing this down real quick so I can have it for later.
So the only conclusion is, if they didn't write this and they knew Paul, this means Paul could not have been dead yet, which puts Acts not written in 80 to 85. It puts puts Acts written before 62 AD. Even if we say 60, 61 AD, this puts Luke before Acts. Now we're talking under 60 AD, which means we're getting closer and closer and closer to all the gospels being written before them, because Luke was one of the last ones released.
Yeah.
Because
When again was the temple destroyed? So I can have that down.
in 70 AD.
70 AD.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I say you see all the skeptical scholars, they place everything after the fact, which is why now the Christian scholars have been disproving their dishonesty, because they're trying to put it after the temple being destroyed, because they will not concede to Jesus being able to know the future, because Jesus said that this was going to happen 40 years before it actually happened.
Yeah.
So they placed everything after that. And now we have scholars, Christian scholars, or even historians. There's even some of them that are not Christian scholars. We have just historian scholars who are stating, hey, this is in fact not true, because the writer of Acts did not record the deaths of Paul, and Paul died in 66. So this means he had to have and also Peter, because Peter died in 64 AD. He died before Paul. So we have Peter 64, Paul 66. So Acts would have to be written before both of those. And then we have James, the brother of Jesus, who died in 62 AD. So we have these three significant people that died between 62 and 66 that are not recorded in Acts. So this means Acts had to have been written before this. So this puts us at about 60 to 62 AD that Acts was written, which means the Gospels of Mark and Matthew came before it, which places us between a 40 and 59 AD, which means we're only 10 to 20 years after the death of Jesus, not 70, 60 years.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll have to look into all that stuff. I really like this.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is ultimately an argument from silence, correct? That
Right,
because
no,
the Gospels don't mention it, that is evidence that to the opposite, like to the
no,
negative.
so it's not necessarily an argument from silence. It's actually an argument from evidence. And the reason is because we know that these writers throughout the history of the Bible, right? Even if you don't want to believe in it, but throughout the history of the Bible, any significant people, any significant figures that died or were killed or were martyred, they're always recorded if they were significant. And Peter and Paul definitely would have been significant because of their importance of the Bible. Peter was a direct disciple of Jesus, so his death would have been important to record. And Paul, the writer of Acts, was connected to Paul, so him not recording it, even if you don't want to say it's Luke, the writer was connected to Paul. So
Yeah.
recording his death is another issue. So it's actually an argument from evidence, not an argument from silence.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd be willing to accept that, even if it wasn't Luke, if it was whoever was penning this was close to the movement, that it is a good argument considering it's not mentioned if they were written after.
Yeah.
But most of these dates with the disciples dying, where do they come from?
Of the scholars. That's why I said you don't have to take my word for it. Even the skepticals. That's why I said Bart Ehrman himself says that these are the dates of the deaths of these people. This is why I'm saying that they messed up, because the skeptics are giving us dates for things, and then the other scholars are finding they're using their data that the skeptics, because the problem is they don't want to use our data because they're saying you're biased. So what our scholars are doing is taking the data that the skeptics accept and using it against them and showing them where they're wrong. And they're like, well, that's why I said it's actually, if you were to go back, I don't know how you you'll probably actually find it from older videos, because since the internet updates, but it's actually a newer thing within the last 10 years that the book of Acts, it used to be stating that it was 80 to 85. It updated because we have so many historians and Christian scholars now stating, hey, this is in fact the actual evidence, and then that's why you see such a wide range now.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the beauty of it all is, if you prove it to be true, then it's true, and we can accept that, and it changes. So, so all of this is to say that sorry, there's something in my mouth, that Jesus made a prediction about what comes naturally from the result of these premises being true.
So the results of these premises is actually, in fact, that these traditions could not be hallucinations because it happened so fast, right? So they're saying this is, this happened 60, 70, 80 years after Jesus. So they're just, talking amongst themselves, and then they're passing things and passing rumors or passing all these things. But because of these dates are confirming it happened so quickly, this means that they really actually believe this, or they really actually saw this, because they made sure they stamped it ASAP and put it out there to the world and say, this has to be put out now, because the world needs to know. Which is why in the book of Galatians, in the book of Corinthians, Paul is stating he's leaving areas like Jerusalem and going to the Gentiles, which would be the other countries outside of Israel, and saying Christ came to not just save Jerusalem, he came here to save you guys too. That's why they're going and they're spreading out. That's why they went to continents like Asia, Africa, and even some parts of Europe, because they're spreading it out, saying we got to go now, because we have to spread this message to the nations, not just Jerusalem, to the nations. So they're doing it quickly because they're sending each other off. That's why Jesus compiled 12 of them because all 12 of them didn't stay in the same areas. All 12 of them went to different spots of the world.
Well, isn't that mostly because didn't Jesus say that before some of you will not taste death before I come back? Didn't he say that? So they thought that the second coming was like going to happen super soon. Like, doesn't he say you won't even be able to reach?
No, he didn't say his second coming. What he said was, some of you would not pass before you see my glory. And what that meant was, this was at the Mount of Transfiguration, where he took where he took Peter and he took John, and they saw him transfigure before their eyes, and Jesus showed him his glorified body after he was resurrected. That was what he was talking about. And this is where they said that they saw Elijah and Moses on the side of Jesus, and Jesus was in his glorified body, and they said they saw him in all white, in the purest white that they've ever seen in their entire lives. And they told their disciples these things, and they told the other apostles these things. So that was what Jesus was referring to. He's referring to some of these disciples that were with him were going to witness him transfigure right before their eyes, proving to them that he is God, so they could tell other people.
And that was right after that was after or before the transfiguration.
The Mount Transfiguration was before the temple was destroyed. This is why he said, he didn't say my second coming. He said you will.
Oh, no, sorry. I was talking about when Jesus says some of you will not pass before you see my glory. Did he say that before or after the transfiguration?
No, he said that before the transfiguration.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And you can, like I said, you can look that up yourself. It's in the Bible. He says it to them, and he's referring to his transfiguration, because not everyone actually got to see him transform right before their eyes.
Okay, so he's talking about the
transfiguration.
Yeah, not the second coming. Okay.
Yes, exactly. That's why he didn't say my coming, or what is in the Bible known as the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is actually referring to his second coming, whereas him saying his glorified self, he's talking about his appearance as a glorified deity, which he was still there on the earth at the time. So he hadn't actually ascended, which means he could never have come a second time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this has been pretty good, man. This has been pretty productive.
Yeah, I thank you for coming on. Let me just show you this real quick before you get off here, man. I just want to show you this real quick. Sorry, my second screen froze for a second.
Hey, I can't be one to talk about technical difficulties. I swiped off 4 times that last night.
Okay, look at this. This is what Jesus was talking about. Look.
Yeah. Matthew 17.
It's literally right after each other. Look. So you have. Oops. My mouse keeps freezing. Okay. So we have Matthew 16 and we have Matthew 17, the very next chapter. Okay, right here. Jesus, red lettering is Jesus speaking. He says, surely I say to you, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. And this is 16:28. And literally right after the beginning of the next chapter, it states, now, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, led them up on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Then Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, is it good for us to be here? If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. So Jesus is letting them see his transfigured body right after he said, some of you here will see me come into my kingdom, into my glory.
So can you go back up to 16?
Yep.
So who tasted death would be my question. Because some of them will not taste death, and they'll see
it would be referring to everyone who was not here. So the people who were here were Peter, James, and John. Those 3, they were there. So Peter is a disciple. James, James, the brother of John, is a disciple, and John is a disciple. So all 3 of them are apostles. Those 3.
Yeah, but he was talking to them in 16. Or who all was he talking to in 16? Sorry.
In 16, he was talking to the whole group.
All of the disciples.
Yes, all of the disciples. So all the disciples, some of them basically, because none of them, the other ones, the other 9 did not see Jesus transfigured. So they died not seeing this transfiguration right before their eyes. The other 3.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. The other 3 saw it. And the reason that they saw it is because, like I said, this is why Peter's death not being recorded in Acts is very important, because how significant Peter, John, James were to the foundation. Peter was so important because Jesus called him the rock. So Peter was somebody after Jesus left that basically gave him the keys and said, hey, you make sure all your brothers are on point. So Peter is very important, which is why he lets him see these things, why James saw these things, and why John saw these things, which is John wrote Revelation.
So this comes down to whether or not the Son of Man's kingdom is his transfiguration, basically, right? That's completely plausible. If that's what he's referring to in 16.
Yeah, that's what he was referring to. He's referring to his transfiguration. They saw his actual full glorified body.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they saw. But yeah, man, I appreciate you. It was actually a really great conversation.
Yeah, I like talking to you. I got all my notes here, so I'll look over them and read up on it. I always appreciate talking to you, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah, next time, if you, like I said, you're gonna do your research. Next time I stream again, then come back and tell me what your thoughts were on that information.
Yeah. All right. I'd love to. All right. Till next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Have a good one. Bye.
This is why we do this. That was an amazing conversation. And this is exactly why we do this, because we're here to have conversations, not be biased, not me be biased, not him be biased. We're trying to progress in the conversation. And if we can have progressions in a conversation, we can have breakthrough. And if we can have breakthrough, this is exactly what we're here for, because we're trying to pull you guys who don't believe in God out of the fire. Truthfully, we're trying to bring you out of the fire. And what do I mean by that? We're trying to grab you and say, come over here, because we want you there in eternal life with us. I want Jason there in eternal life with me. I want him to be there. I'm trying to pull him and say, Jesus really is the truth. He's telling us he has a way for us to never, ever perish, ever. And I'm trying to pull all of you guys, as many as I can before I die, physically. Pull you guys with me, so that way when Jesus resurrects all of us, one day we're going to be able to have a transfigured body like Jesus. This is what he's promising. And I want a transfigured body. you're going to want to transfigure your body where you can't get cancer, where you can't burn, where you can't get scratches, where you don't cry. You can live in a mansion. You can have gold. You can have silver. This is what Jesus is teaching us. And this is why we do it. That was actually probably the best conversation I think we've had on this stream, because Jason is a very good guest. He was a guest that was willing. He was open-minded. He was open-minded. He was willing to listen to the evidence instead of saying, well, I don't care about what you're saying because I don't believe it. That means he's not open-minded. But Jason was humble enough for him, even himself, to say, maybe I could be wrong, or maybe I could look into it. That is a great thing. And he's honest. That's the other big key factor. Honest. He's honest even from his own worldview. I don't have no issues talking with atheists if it's like this, because Jason was honest. He was honest and say, hey, I'm gonna look into it myself, instead of just saying, I don't care what you're talking about. Be quiet. It's not true. Your God is this. Your God is that. Your God is this. Your God is that. So I appreciate Jason. Jason is always welcome to come on. Always. And this Chuck guy, you're very emotional, man. You say a lot of stuff. Yeah. Awesome combo. Yeah, I think that was a great conversation. Yeah, Jason, Chuck, this guy, if y'all see him in the comments, Chuck, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I feel like you got some demonic spirits in you, truthfully. And we have to get those out of you. For real. We really do. You got some demons that are sitting on your shoulders that gotta go, because they are trying to control you. Because let me show you why. The Bible actually says that there is no God. The Bible says that. Let me show you. Go to Psalm 53:1. Let's go to Psalm 53:1. The Bible says there is no God. Look. Psalm 53:1. The wicked fool says in his heart, there is no God. They act corruptly and commit abominable injustice. There is no one who does good. So look. This is what your favorite sentence is. There is no God. Yeah. That's in the Bible. The Bible says the wicked fool says in his heart that there is no God. They act corruptly and commit abominable injustice. This is what we see the world doing literally right now. They act corrupt and they commit things that are heinous. We see it with the Epstein stuff. We see it with the Diddy stuff. We see it across the world, that these people who say that there is no God, they don't care about anything but themselves, which means they produce chaos. So this is why I say, Chuck, you got to get them demons up off you, man, because right now you're acting like a wicked fool. That's just the truth. You're acting like a wicked fool. You really are. Because I don't understand how you can say all these crazy things about something you don't believe in unless you got demons on you, boy. For real. I don't understand it, because you wouldn't be this angry and say, yeah, unicorns this, unicorns that, unicorns. You wouldn't, because you don't care about unicorns. You know why you say all these crazy, corrupt things about God? Because you know something tells you that there is a God, and the demons that's talking to you behind your back telling you, say it. That's the truth. So I'm going to pray for you to get those demons up off your back. For real. Yep. There is a God. That's right. No, Chuck. We're not going to question the morals about Numbers 31. You don't even believe in a God. This is what I was talking about earlier. You're trying to jump to chapter 37 before you read chapter 1. You have to figure out who God is and does he exist before you try to jump over here about the morals and morality that you steal from my God. Objective morality comes from my God, my Christ. So before you try to steal the word morality and use it and try to corrupt it, again, say right here, they act corruptly. Before you try to corrupt morality, figure out if there is or is not a God first. Before you try to go into this thing about numbers, you don't even believe in God. So why do you care what the Bible says, Chuck? Again, that sounds like spiritual warfare to me that you dealing with over there. You have this big issue with God that you don't believe in. How do you have an issue with numbers when you don't believe in God? You should just be moving on about your merry day. Seriously. Let me show you something else. We're about to go to the book of Galatians 1, 8 through 9. Let's go to the book of Galatians. Let's go to the book of Galatians. And this is Paul again. Paul confirming God exists. Yeah. The book of Galatians. But even if we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you, that then what we have preached to you, let him be accursed, as we have said before. So now I say again, if anyone preaches any other gospel to you than what you have received, let him be accursed. Let him be cursed. And this is the problem that you guys have with God, because he's holding people accountable to their corrupt acts. He's holding people accountable to their abominable acts, their twisting of words, their twisting of scriptures, their twisting of his creation. This is what's going on. You're distorting the Bible, Chuck. You're distorting numbers. This is what you're doing. You're saying, I don't agree with the morality in numbers because you don't understand what's going on in the numbers. So you can't understand what's going on in numbers when you don't believe there's a God. You're distorting it because you're listening to these atheist scholars like Richard Dawkins who don't even understand their own doctrine. Because one point, Richard Dawkins says, there is no Jesus. Jesus couldn't have risen from the dead because he doesn't exist. Then in the next quote, he says, oh, Jesus was a great moral teacher. So which one is it, Richard Dawkins? Is Jesus a real person or is he not? Because you're contradicting yourself by stating he couldn't have risen from the dead because you don't know if he exists. But then stating he was, not if he was real, he would have been a moral teacher. You said Jesus was a moral teacher, confirming Jesus was a real person. So which one is it? This is the doctrine that these atheists are pushing to you guys because they sound smart, but really they're demonic. That's what it is. They're demons pushing it onto you, and it is getting your ears itching. It's getting your ears itching. You know why? Because it sounds smart. But the Bible tells us, anybody can be smart, but not anybody can be wise. Wisdom comes from God. That's where it comes from. I don't care who passes an ACT test. I don't care who passes the bar exam. I don't care about none of that. But if you aren't wise, you will still commit dumb actions. That's the truth. This is the difference between a smart person and a wise person. A smart person says, I'm smart. I know about books. But still make dumb decisions. Still got 3 baby mamas like Elon Musk. Everybody considers Elon Musk smart, but he got multiple baby mamas. You know why? Because he's not wise. He may be smart, but he's not wise. He's doing dumb things. This is what the Bible teaches. It doesn't matter how much smartness you think you have. You're not wise. Because a wise person would have one wife and have children with her. That's what a wise person would do. A smart person will just say, I accumulated all this money because I got a business. Yeah, you may be smart, but you're dumb because you're not wise. That's the problem. It's all about wise people believe in the Bible. You know why wise people believe in the Bible? Because wisdom is in the Bible. I've never, ever seen a wise person that doesn't believe in the Bible. Never, ever. Again, don't misquote me. I'm talking about wise, not smart. There's a lot of smart people who pass bar exams. They're lawyers, they're doctors. But guess what? They get caught up in scandals because they're not wise. They care more about corruption and money than they care about making the right decision because they're not wise. This is your issue. This is the issue. He said, God is real. I dropped my argument. God is real. You are right. God is real. Oh, he said the link expired. Let me see. Are you sure the link expired? Let me try to pop it back up. Maybe it clicked off. Maybe that's why y'all haven't joined. Let me see if the link is up still. Because sometimes it does like drop off. Let me see if the link is not on the chat so I can let people join in. Because you might be right. I know sometimes it does trip. Let me look. Let me look for y'all real quick. No, the link is not expired, man. It's still on there. It's still on there. Let me ask my wife real quick if she can click it. But can you see if you can go to YouTube real quick and see if it allows you to click the link? No, it doesn't. Oh yeah, you guys are right. My bad. It shows like the link on my side, but maybe it's because I'm doing it from my computer. But yeah, my wife just said that she can't click the link. You don't see it like on the top of the chat at all?
You can't click it.
You can't click it? Okay, let me try to. You guys are right. Let me fix this. We have an issue. I'm gonna fix it real quick, y'all. Bear with me real quick. Okay, I just did that one. Okay, it should work now. I just deleted the pinned link and then I repinned it just now too. If you're watching from vertical, I just repinned it to the vertical, and if you're watching from horizontal, I just repinned it to the horizontal as well. So it should work now where you guys will be able to join. He said, Drink the Dr. Pepper says, I don't like subjective morals, therefore objective morals exist. I'm curious, are you atheist? Because the way like you're saying it, I think you're saying it as if you do believe in objective morals. So maybe you don't necessarily believe in God, but you believe in objective morals. Is that correct? And if so, I'm actually interested in having a conversation with you, because I wonder how you can not believe in a God but have objective morals. That would be pretty interesting conversation, because the position that I hold is there is no objective moral unless God exists. A moral lawgiver exists. Oh, we got a strong believer in the comments. The Young Apologist 15 says, I could drop my argument in the chat, atheists. Said premise 1, absolute nothing cannot actualize, so a something always existed. Do you agree? That's a good point. That's a good point, because if it's nothing, it can't actually exist. If it's actually nothing, it can't actually exist. So therefore, something had to always exist, which points to our eternal God. That's the first premise you can never get around. You can stop at premise 1. They can't get around that. It says, no, that's not true. This guy says, if God has a mind, they are subjective. This is in fact false. Even us as human beings have objective morals, whether you want to admit it or not. How do we know? Unless you are a demon or Satan himself, all of us would agree that doing harm to a child is absolutely wrong. Infinite across the board. All of us, it don't matter if you speak English, you speak Spanish, you speak Portuguese, you speak Latin, you speak Greek. All of us would agree, if we all saw it and we all spoke different languages, all of us would pounce on seeing a 35-year-old man kick a little 6-year-old in the face. We would all say this is absolutely wrong. You know why? Because there's an absolute objective moral to what just happened. Absolutely. So God is not subjective. He's consistent, which is why he can be objective, not subjective. That's atheism, which is why I say atheism is foolish, because you flip-flop back and forth. Tomorrow or next week, you're going to come back here and comment and say, this right here is objective, because you're going to flip-flop. That's what you're going to do. That's what atheism does. That's why I stated it's untrustworthy, because one week you will agree that a woman could only be a woman, and then the next week you will agree that a woman could be a man if she wanted to be. Because you're crazy. You have crazy thoughts. That's why I said atheism is teaching corrupt mindsets. It's teaching a literally abominable mindset. It's causing chaos and havoc across the world. This subjective thought that I can feel like I do what I want to do. And then you end up in trouble, and then you get mad that you end up in trouble. This is the problem that I have with atheism. I have no problem with people. People, cool. Love people. The ideas that people push and try to form it into a group is the problem. I hate atheism, love the people. I just talked to one, Jason. Jason is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Jason, the person, I love it. I love him. The mindset he has of atheism, I hate the atheism, because it's corrupt. That's what I hate. Jason, the person, if I met him in real life, I would be cool with him because I can tell the way he thinks, the way he speaks, he holds himself to a certain standard. This is why I love the person. The person is not corrupt. It's his thought that's being indoctrinated by the demons, by the Satanists that's corrupting his mind. And I am Jason. I'm gonna one day you're gonna end up a Christian. I can tell because the intellect level he has and the humbleness he has. He's already closer to Christianity than he thinks. He's gonna be a Christian one day. Watch. Nobody else want to join? Have a conversation? Atheism, this is my topic. Atheism is foolish. Paul confirms God exists. Do you agree or do you disagree? Do you agree or do you disagree? I don't want to say his name wrong. Let me pop you up, boss. Hey, what's up, boss? Can you hear me?
Hey man, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I don't want to mispronounce your name. How do you say your name?
Isidro.
Isidro?
Isidro.
Isidro.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Isidro. Okay. So, what do you think about the? I don't know how long you've been listening. How long have you been listening?
Only a couple of minutes, but yesterday I tuned in a little bit, and I've mostly been typing away at the comments and stuff like that.
Okay. So, what do you think about the topic? The topic is atheism is foolish, and Paul confirms God exists. What do you think?
I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the other topics that you were talking about, and
was it a topic I said today? Something I said today?
Yeah. Just a couple of minutes ago. You're saying how you hate the idea of atheism. So I identify as atheist, and I don't think there is anyone or anything or any belief system telling me how I should or I guess you can say what I should believe in. So it's just kind of myself forming my own, moral code, what I think or how I think I should be living my life.
So are you telling me that from birth you were an atheist?
No. Well, I mean, I guess from birth, yes, but I was I grew up Catholic.
So then what you just said wouldn't actually be true. You just made a statement stating that you don't need someone telling you, how to be an atheist or anything like that. But in fact, there had to be, because you just confirmed that you were a Catholic at some point. So something had to influence your change in direction from Catholicism to atheism.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think.
Right?
I'm sorry, Rob.
I said, so something did influence that then.
I think it was just more me kind of questioning the faith. I wouldn't say it was a particular belief. I think it's just more of an internal thought. Me going, well, is this really what happened? Is this really kind of, what I need? Or I guess you can say, does this make sense to me?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it just kind of stopped making sense. As a Catholic, I did, I was baptized, did my communion, did my confirmation, even taught confirmation. But at some point, I just kind of went, and was a church goer, went every Sunday and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to me personally, it just kind of stopped making sense.
So then there was, between you going to church every Sunday to where you are now,
yeah,
there had to be either an influence or an event that made you say, I'm gonna question this?
I,
I've
I, I've
never,
always been
the reason I
very curious mind, you know.
the reason I asked
Yeah,
it that way is because I've never seen like someone, like, for example, I've talked to people who were Christians and then they went to atheist
yeah,
or agnostic, or they were a part of something first and then they went to something. It's always usually an event that happens or something happens that sparks it, that transition them, versus someone who never was a Christian or never was a Catholic, right? And they were just introduced to atheism first. This is a completely different approach versus someone
yeah.
usually.
I think it's just kind of over time. You know, I've always kind of I guess I've always had moments where I question the faith, and I think over time it just, as I kind of started looking into it and looking at what the alternative beliefs might have been, or what the explanations are for whether there is or isn't a God, and you know,
So then you would disagree with um Paul actually confirms an existence of God.
yeah, yeah.
Why so?
Not just I guess denying Paul's claim, but just denying the claim that there is one.
Well, the reason I say Paul is because even by skeptic scholars or atheist scholars, they confirm that Paul has at least seven authentic writings. And in these seven authentic writings of Paul, Paul is stating something very significant, which is there is a God, there is a Jesus, and Jesus died for our sins, and he rose from the dead, and he's now in heaven. So I'm curious, why would these atheist scholars even consider that the fact that these things are at least authentic to Paul?
Yeah, so I guess from a historical point of view, I think atheists would agree that the disciples, Jesus, were real people,
Mhm.
and whether they were or weren't doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't matter if Alexander the Great was a real person to me. It doesn't matter if Socrates or Plato were real persons to me. Whether they existed or not, I don't think that's something really that you know. I guess
It's significant to you.
would be of significance to somebody who would question um, whether God is real or not, right?
The reason I think that their existence matters is because confirming their existence confirms that these things have to be at least looked into.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
What I mean by that is if if God does exist and a man walking the earth claimed to be God, is that at least worth looking into? There was someone walking this earth that claimed that he was God in the flesh and he had a father who was still in heaven.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if that person existed, that is a very, very, very huge claim to
oh
say
yeah,
that this person
of course.
existed.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
see, that's why I say their existence matters, because if you don't confirm their existence, then who cares? Then I can see what you're saying about who cares if this person existed. It doesn't matter. But we're talking about a person who changed the world even that we're in today. Jesus is the most infamous name in the whole world.
yeah. I would
You see what
definitely
I'm
agree
saying?
with that. Yeah, I
So
would agree with that
his
statement.
his existence matters because of his claims, not just his existence in general. His
Yeah,
his his claims and confirming his existence are significant. Would you agree?
right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure. I think much of what you said is definitely true in the historical sense. Obviously, those are big claims,
Yeah.
um, especially from a religious point of view.
And that
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. I don't know.
Oh no, I was gonna say I've also kind of been looking at kind of the differences between Judaism, Islam, and
Mhm.
Christianity, and trying to figure out why,
They're
um,
different.
if Jesus was God, why they still don't haven't united. I guess you can
I can
say
tell you why.
because
I could easily tell you why.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean I know why, but
why do you think? I'm just curious, real quick. It's off
well,
topic, but I just want to know really quickly. Why do you think that they differ?
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, it's that Jews they believe that Jesus was not God, and they still believe in the Old Testament God, and that God cannot be flesh. And then for much of Islam, it's that they believe Jesus was a prophet and not God, and I guess Muhammad had other was also another prophet 500 years after Jesus. So they kind of want to latch onto a more. I mean, I guess at this point, I can't even say it's a modern prophet,
So,
But I have seen a lot of you know, I guess arguments against Islam,
yeah.
and I would say, I mean, if anything, I think the two that are more of a bigger focus is Judaism and Christianity. It's like, why haven't the Jews completely converted? Why is it that they're not even being taught the New Testament?
So the funny thing about that is, so quickly for what you just said. So the reason that Islam is doesn't agree with Christianity is because Islam actually contradicts their own prophet. Jesus,
I've seen.
Jesus is saying, "I am the Son of God, and I've came here to save the world."
Right.
And Islam is claiming God could never have a son. Jesus is just a prophet. But here's the issue. The issue is, even in the Quran, Jesus is the one coming back to save the Quran. So in the Quran, they say that Jesus is coming back. So why would an ethnic Jew be coming back to save Arabs? Why isn't your Allah sending Muhammad back to save the world?
Right.
They're contradicting themselves in their own book. So
yeah, I've seen a lot of those arguments.
Yeah, throw them out. We don't care about that. Throw it out. That's false prophet.
Yeah. No,
Now, Judaism and Christianity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Judaism and Christianity, they are hand in hand. They go together. And actually, one important fact that a lot of people actually either don't know or actually never actually really thought about or were taught is actually it depends on the Jew you're talking to. There are Jews that believe in Christ. They're called Messianic Jews.
Yeah, I've
you know what I'm saying? So it really depends on the type of Jew you're talking to. So there's some Jews that believe in Christ and there's some Jews that don't. And the problem is they reject Jesus because they think he was blasphemy. But if you go back to the Old Testament, that's the same God in the New Testament. And how do we know? Because the Old Testament clearly states that there is a Messiah. There is a Son of Man who's going to come down on the clouds, and he has the authority of the Ancient of Days, which the Ancient of Days is always been identified as Yahweh, God himself. So you have a Son of Man coming down on the clouds of heaven who resembles a human being. In the Old Testament, he's in Jeremiah, he's in Isaiah, and he's in Daniel.
Yeah.
So the Old Testament is telling them that there's going to be a man that comes down who resembles the Son of Man, meaning looking like a human, who comes down on the clouds of heaven, who's going to have the authority of Ancient of Days. And they're rejecting their own book. So the reason that they're confused is because they don't even want to accept what their own God told them since the beginning of time, which even in the New Testament, it actually even tells you this, that God he's actually partially hardened the hearts of Israel. And the reason is because guess what? If the Jews themselves actually did accept Jesus, you will have the issue that you have today, because God wasn't just coming to save the Israelites or Israel. He was coming to save the world. And the Israel believed that they were the chosen people. They believed that only them were chosen for God, right? Only them. But Jesus said, no, it's for everybody. So God partially hardened the hearts of some of the Jews. The reason is because if the Jews who thought that they were the chosen ones accepted Jesus, guess what they would have never done? They would have never split in half, and some of the Jews left to spread the gospel to the world.
Right.
So if they would have kept the gospel to themselves and said, this gospel is for us, we don't care about the world, they would have never given me and you the opportunity to hear the gospel of Jesus. So it even tells us God partially hardened some of the Jews' hearts in order for his will to be fulfilled, for Jesus' gospel to be spread across the world. because they didn't want the Gentiles to get the good news. So he allowed this to happen so that way the whole world could hear his news.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. The idea behind the concept of God, obviously, is an appealing idea.
Mhm.
I think that there are a lot of comforts that that concept provides for people, and I'm not necessarily against what religion can do and does for people. I'm not really against that.
Mhm.
For me, it's just without trying to be offensive, it's just kind of a
Oh
fairy
no,
tale.
none taken. I don't take this personally.
And
It's great.
like for me personally, it's like, okay, and even within our own communities and stuff like that, I can see the church and um, they do a lot of community outreach and cleaning up neighborhoods and
Mhm.
cleaning up addictions, and I'm all for that, right? I'm not saying, oh, let's abolish it. No,
The
this is not
good
what
the good deeds.
right, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, even helping people cope with death. I think it's a beautiful concept, right?
So
Going to
what is
heaven.
it?
Yeah.
What is it that you do reject or question? Because you said there's some of these things here. You're like, I'm
Yeah,
cool.
I just don't accept that. I mean, I'm familiar with the concept of God. I
Mhm.
just don't accept the concept of God. While that stuff sounds nice, it's
Mhm.
like I don't think I need that to be a good person, right?
Well,
Well,
that's the
and I know it's subjective. I mean, I've been looking into this kind of stuff for a while. I know people say, oh, it's not about being good to get into heaven, but the thing is, I don't want to be good to get into heaven. I want to be good just to be good, and that's the difference. The thing is, I feel like a lot of
that's
Christians.
the thing though is there's not one human being. This is the reason why Jesus said he came in the first place because
No, I get that.
he's stating objectively, not subjectively. He's stating objectively there is not one good human being that walks this earth because every single one of you sins. Every single one of you sins, and because of this, I'm not a
Right,
God of destruction. I'm a God of compromise. I'm a
right.
God of reconcile. I'm a sovereign God. So I'm
Yeah.
coming here. I do not want to destroy you. I want to save you. In order for me to save
No,
you,
I get that.
I have to, I have to take on the burden of that sin. So there's not one human being, myself included. There's not
Yeah,
one human being who's actually a good person,
yeah,
objectively.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, the concept of sin, the concept of being bad and doing evil things and lying or being deceptive or whatever. I mean, we're all kind of guilty of that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not everything
Yeah.
that's outlined we're going to be guilty of.
Correct.
I mean, some might,
Mhm.
but I think
So
with,
then,
with me, it's not about um, being saved. With me, it's if I feel like I lived a good life and I did good, you know,
but with
and
atheism, this is the
yeah,
other part. This is why I like actually talking to atheists because this is my thing. What would a good life matter
yeah.
if we pass away and nothing exists? This means ultimately you're living
Yeah.
for nothing. So if you're living
Well,
for nothing,
yeah,
why do you care to be good?
yeah. So I would say it is a very individual kind of um, I guess goal. Not everyone, if
But
they
why
found out,
if nothing matters? Like if
yeah,
there is nothing after this, why would it matter?
yeah. So for me personally, uh, I would say it gives me a higher value for life, knowing that after this, like this is the only thing I get. For me, I would treasure this life more than anything, right?
But if it's
Yeah,
subjective, that means you have no value. That's the
yeah,
problem.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, maybe I don't, right? And
No,
I'm
I
okay
think
with
you
that.
do. I think you
No,
do.
no, and
Because
that's fine.
I think
As a
you are
Christian,
made in the image
yeah,
of God.
as a Christian, you would say that, and that's fine, right? I understand that. I've had these
No,
conversations.
I'm asking you
Yeah,
because you're the atheist.
Yeah.
How can you substantiate that you have a sense of value, which is why you do the good that you do? You said because it's building a sense of value for me. This is why I do these things. I'm saying, how could you have a sense of value as an atheist if none of this stuff matters anyway?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if we kind of identify what it means to value something, yeah. I mean, money might hold value, but in certain economies, like Venezuela, for example, money doesn't mean anything. People are wiping their butts with money, right? And so like their currency doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so again, you can say, well, what's the point of being rich in Venezuela if the money don't mean nothing, right? And okay,
That's
I
true.
get it,
That's
but
actually
in the U.S., if you're rich in that currency, then then you're well off, right?
no.
And
If you're rich in the U.S., all you are just rich. It has nothing to do with, because when you die, you're
no,
not rich
well,
anymore. You're just dead.
no, I mean I get
You
that,
know what I'm saying?
but
So
yeah,
what Jesus is stating is every single thing on this earth is going to perish, but your soul is going to live forever. And he's trying to make you rich in soul, not
no,
rich
I get that.
anything else. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I mean the concept of what you just stated,
Mhm.
um, I think is a type of concept that would appeal mostly to poor people, the majority. I mean, obviously, I'm poor as well.
But
I
then
mean,
why are there rich Christians then?
I mean, the thing is, Christianity also tends to, or not just Christianity, but just religion in general. They tend to fearmonger. They say things like, well, if you don't believe, you'll burn in hell for all eternity, and it gets people thinking, damn, like, what if that's actually what happens? And I think just out of fear, people tend to.
But that's what you're doing. You're stating, well, there is no God, so I'm okay with it if I'm wrong of going to hell.
Well, I mean, as an atheist, I don't believe in a hell, right?
No, I know that, but I'm saying if
Uh-huh.
you are wrong, then what?
Yeah, yeah, okay,
You
so
have no way, just like your argument against me is, you
no,
have
no,
no way of saying that there actually is a God. I can put
yeah,
the same hypothetical on you and
yeah,
say,
of course, of
what
course.
if you're wrong and you take your soul there? What do you do then?
Yeah. So okay. So I would say, because obviously that's the common theme that I hear a lot is that well, there's no risk in Christians believing, because if you're right, then you go to heaven, and if you're wrong, then nothing happens.
No,
And
if we're right, it's not just go to heaven. If we're right, Jesus is stating you're going to have a new body that will never die. So I'm going to be born again in this flesh, but it will never be able to die again. I'm going to have all the good foods to eat. I'm never going to have to worry about cancer. I'm never going to have to worry about scratches or burns or crying or any of these things. He's
yeah,
stating that the earth we live on is going to be a new one that
I
will
get that.
never perish.
I
So
get
it's
that.
not just go to heaven. It's a reforming of
Yeah.
what we see today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as I said before, it sounds good, right? And I think that's the
Doesn't
big
that sound
appeal.
better than what we live right now?
Well, of course,
So why would you not want to at
but
least take
yeah,
that
but
risk?
that's also kind of the fantasy of it. The fantasy of it is what I'm saying. It's supposed to be above where we are now, so that it can appeal to people, so that people say, I want a piece of that, you know. Um, But what I was saying is that, you know, for me personally, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, I think okay. This is.
Yeah,
I'm gonna just ask this: what about God do you reject? Because there's something about God that you say I
uh-huh.
don't believe in His system. So there's something that's making you say
Yeah,
I reject Him because of
yeah. So I think it's the main thing. I think it's
the
kind of
hell.
the inconsistency of his God given morality. Um, I think people like to say, he's responsible for, giving us a moral compass, People say, well, without God, how would you know right from wrong? But the thing is, and I know kind of the answer that people already give when I kind of question God's morality. People say, well, he's God. His actions are not immoral; they're righteous.
Okay, so what you're
Um,
stating is
yeah,
you reject God because you don't think he's actually all good as he's portraying to be.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. And I would guess I would guess that the reason this is because a lot of it has to do with possibly the Old Testament God.
Yeah, I mean, of course. Yeah,
And a lot of times what I see is when you're on that side of this of the world, like when you're on the atheist side of the Old Testament,
yeah,
they're distorting what's actually going on. Because okay, I'll give you an example. Look at this. I'm gonna show you this because I want you to get a concept of what I'm about to explain. Look,
yeah,
so Psalm 53:1 right here says, "The wicked fool says in his heart, there is no God," right? But
sure.
if I were to take this part out right here and then just give you this part right here of the verse and say, there is no God,
Hmm.
you wouldn't get the context that he's saying the fool says that there is no God, not that the Bible says that there is no God. But
Sure.
if I just give you this concept right here and just say there is no God, and then
Yeah,
put that out there, so what they're doing is, for example, like in places like Deuteronomy or Numbers, they're taking the piece of it and say, hey, look at God producing genocide in this area right here, but they're leaving out this part here, leaving out the part that God gave them 400 years to stop sacrificing babies, to stop sexually assaulting women, to stop murdering each other as brother and sister. He gave them 400 years to do this. They're leaving that part out.
no, I mean, I get kind of
Would
what you're
it be
saying.
moral?
I think a lot of
Would it be
uh,
moral for you, right? Would you say you're a just person if someone was to harm? I don't know if you have kids, but if you have kids, if someone was to
yeah,
harm your child or harm your woman, right?
yeah.
And then you put justice into them, and would you say that you were wrong for that?
If I put justice into them,
Yeah, if someone harmed your child and then you judge them for it, right?
yeah,
And you judge them for it, would you call yourself unjust?
yeah,
You would. Why?
yeah. I don't think it's up to me to judge. I think we have systems in
So you would
society.
let them harm your child.
Well, if they've already been harmed, then I can't prevent that.
Oh man,
Now, if I can prevent them from being harmed, then yeah, I would try to step in, right?
that's
Well,
that's that's where we differ. The problem is,
well,
if someone were to harm my child, I would try to bring justice to them
and that's fine, but you
because
would
it's
also face the
absolutely wrong.
consequences of our law.
No,
You know.
but it's absolutely wrong.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's right. Uh, the of course you would want to. Of course, I would want to too. But I think I would be smart enough to say, well, I'm gonna let the law handle it.
But then that means
Because
so
if I
you
step
so
in,
you wouldn't do it, but you would let someone else do the justice.
well, that's why we have law.
So then someone is still putting justice there. Would you call the law injustice for doing that?
Yeah, it can be. It can
No,
be.
no. If someone actually we have confirmation that they harmed your child, and the,
Yeah,
the police said we're doing this to him because they did this to your child, would
yeah.
you say the law was unjust?
In that instance, no, it's just.
Exactly. This is what God is stating. God is stating, I love all of my children. And if someone harms my children, and in the instance of those cases of like the genocide that they want to use in the Bible, these people were sacrificing babies. And God said, stop doing it. And he gave them 400 years to
Yeah,
stop doing it. And he
yeah.
said, you know what? You're not getting it. Now I have to bring judgment upon you. He's not unjust. He's just because he promised those babies who are now in heaven with him, I'm going to get justice for what they did for you because I claimed I loved you. Do you see my point?
I see it, but I think you can kind of tell that that's not a a good enough answer.
Because you reject God. That's why. But the logic, the reasoning I'm using is true. You just don't want to apply it to God because I just applied the same analogy to the law, to the police, and you said yes. But when I applied to God, you said no.
No. Listen, I believe that just like the law, God can be just, but he can also be unjust, just like the law, right? I gave you instances.
Wait,
I said it myself. Do I think the law is always just? No. Sometimes injustice happens.
well, that's because the law is man. Sometimes they'll get stuff wrong, even if
Well,
it actually even if it actually didn't occur. God knows everything that occurs, so he can't be unjust because he knows the truth already. That's the difference.
yeah, I think my biggest rejections is that God is not he's not omniscient. Uh,
You don't think he's omnipresent?
no, not omnipresent. Omniscient,
Oh, okay,
meaning
okay.
he knows past,
Yeah, he knows
present,
past, present, and
future.
future. Yeah.
Yeah, that to me doesn't really make sense considering how things have kind of developed. And here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. If God was not omniscient, why would it take away from him? Like if we're to say, okay, God created things to be a certain way, they developed, you know, or they kind of turned out to be another way, and now he's trying to, fix things. And people say, oh no, that's not what he's doing. This was already planned out before his creation. He knows exactly how things are going to turn out.
So in the
Yeah.
Bible, did you see him trying to fix things, or did you just
Oh
see
yeah.
him?
Oh yeah.
No, no.
Right from the beginning. Right from the beginning.
In the Bible, when these things occurred, it tells you this happened and God did this. God did this. God did this. It never shows you God scrambling and trying to pick up the pieces. Never. Never, ever, ever.
It kind of did though. It
It
kind of
does.
did though. It did though. Especially Old Testament did. And I mean that's the whole reason for Jesus, right? He's trying to fix stuff. He's trying to fix stuff.
No, what he's trying to get people to see is they will never go to paradise without him. That's what he's trying to get people to see. Fix their hearts because everyone's hearts are corrupt. He's stating that the people who are living on this earth, all of you are corrupted and you're misusing the good that I gave you. I gave you hands not to hurt your mother, not to hurt your sister. I gave you hands so you can garden and feed your family, not to abuse your wife.
Yeah,
That's why I gave you hands.
yeah,
And he's correcting things like this.
but you say he's correcting things.
He's correcting what humans are corrupting, not God. You are trying to make it seem like God is corrupting things. No, humans
No,
are
no, no,
corrupting things.
no. That's not what I said.
Yeah, you
What I said
God,
is he's trying
God
to
will
fix
do
things.
something, and God will do something, and He will try to fix it. Meaning, God makes an action, and He's trying to fix it. No, humans are committing actions, and God is coming to correct the humans.
Right, but he's correcting the act of correcting,
Humans, not
which is his creation.
God is not. God is not correcting Himself. He's correcting humans.
But he's correcting his creation.
What does that mean?
I mean, I'm gonna say it like this.
Because you're saying God is the corrupt person. Is it God corrupt or is humans?
I mean, humans can be corrupt. That's fine, right?
Well, I'm saying if God is coming to correct something that humans that are corrupt, that doesn't mean God is corrupt just because a human is corrupt.
No, I mean that's not even what I said either. I never say
Well,
that
no, you
God
said
was
you
corrupt.
reject God because He's inconsistent, because He'll do something here and then try to fix it over here. But I'm
Yeah,
telling you, it's not Him doing something over here and then trying to fix it over here. What's happening is humans are doing something here, and then God has to come clean up their mess over here because He says He loves them. That's what's happening.
yeah, I get it, and I don't think you're really understanding what I'm saying. But it's fine. I do see people are getting a little antsy though, so I'm gonna let somebody else. They starting to be like, man, these guys going back and forth. This is never end. So I do appreciate the time.
Yeah, yeah. Appreciate you for coming on.
Yeah. I definitely want to give other people a chance though.
Yeah. Appreciate you.
But I'll see if I can come on another time, and
Yeah.
then maybe we could pick up from there.
Yeah, I appreciate you. You said Isidro, right? Isidro?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did I say that right or I messed it up?
No, you got it.
I appreciate
All
you,
right,
boss.
thank you.
Hopefully I see you
Appreciate
another time. Yes, sir. Alrighty. All right, y'all. I've been on here for 2 hours. You know, I gotta go eat dinner. My wife cooked some dinner. My kids getting ready to go to bed soon, so I'm gonna eat dinner with my kids and my wife. And I see Legendary here, and I see Jay. I'm gonna get, if you guys come back next time, I promise you, I'm gonna bring you two guys up to talk to you guys next time. But I have to go eat dinner. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you.